Yes. So this is a conscious decision that they have taken in consultation with all the top B schools, because data has become an integral part of management. So earlier there used to be a section which was IR section. Now the and IR section did not contribute to your GMAT score. But this IR section combining with some other topics, they have introduced a completely new section, which is data insights. One big change is that they have removed the sentence correction questions from verbal. So the weightage of grammar, like particularly questions which specifically require your knowledge of grammar, are gone. There is no essays anymore. Even in Quant, there are certain topics that are removed, notably geometry. Now there won't be any geometry question. Earlier they used to ask geometry question. Focus on accuracy has drastically increased, because earlier there were 30 odd questions in a section. Now you have 20 something questions in a section, 20, 21, and 23. Because of that, what has happened is that you really need to be very accurate with your attempt. Time is now 45 minutes for each section. And finally, this is something very interesting which I'll go in detail in the later part of the session, that you have the option to review and change 3 answers per section. Up to 3 answers per section is something that you can change, which was not allowed in previous editions of GMAT. So this has a very specific advantage and some traps, which I will get into. So let's just quickly go through the sections. So Quant will have 21 problem solving questions. Majorly the topics are arithmetic and algebra. Data Insights has 20 questions. It has a variety of questions. Like you can expect graphs and table questions. You can expect data sufficiency. You can expect questions where your verbal skills are tested. And you can expect 3 questions on a multi-source reasoning type of question. And coming to verbal, you have 23 questions which are spaced between RC and CR. Again, the time is 45 minutes. Now, among these 3 sections, you can take one optional break of 10 minutes. So you have the option of one optional break. That's it. Score range is, so they have introduced this 5 at the end so that you can differentiate between the older GMAT score and the new GMAT score. And earlier, Quant used to be out of 51, verbal also used to be out of 51. Now they have changed the scale to 90. All the 3 scores are out of 90. Now, if I go to the source of MBA.com and see, compare the scores that are used to get in your previous GMAT attempt and the scores that you get now in the Focus Edition, this is a clear table that tells you the story. That earlier, what used to happen was that the like the number score which were on 99 percentile and above were lesser. As you can see, you can either get 760, 770, 780, 790, or 800. So they were like 4 or 5 exact values which denoted 99 percentile. 99 percentile means being in the top 1% of test takers. Now what they have done is they have drastically introduced extra values above 99%. So it is easier to differentiate in the Focus Edition. And that's why comparatively on an absolute basis, your score will be lesser in Focus Edition as compared to your older GMAT versions. As you can see, a 750 is equal to a 715. 760 is also equal to a 715. Now, if I talk about the score, which is the highest average for any college, like 733 or 734 is the highest of the best management college in the country, like the Wharton and Stanford's. All these colleges have an average of 730 plus of the 2024 batch. So this is the highest score that literally is the average of any B school in the entire world. There is no score higher than that when it comes to the average. So this is a very desirable score, because if you are getting somewhere here, you have average score which is better than all of the colleges. in the world, and this is that number. If you are aiming for something elite, something super premium, but if you have a score which is in the range of 80 percentile, you are eligible for a lot of colleges. And if I talk about the 80 percentile score, it is now 615 in the Focus Edition. It used to be 680. Actually, 650 was a standard which you like a lot of colleges used to accept. But as you can see, that 615 score can vary from 75 to 80. So you can aim for a score of 615, which is sort of helps you get into a lot of colleges, a lot of European colleges, because European colleges do not ask for that high a GMAT score like the top colleges of United States ask for. Now, if I come from section to section and how to approach that section. So if I talk about quant, there are broadly two topics like I mentioned. One is arithmetic and other is algebra. Now from arithmetic and algebra, what I will highly recommend is this idea of 200 questions and the idea of repeating the questions you have solved, revisiting the concept again and again, and so that you are familiar with the topic. I feel if you solve 200 questions of one subtopic, that's when you are ready to actually get it right with certainty in the exam. So 200 questions is a good approximation that we can take to ensure that we are mastering any topic. So when it comes to preparing for quant, you should be patient and be like, okay, let me first solve 200 questions of a particular topic, and then I will decide if I have become good with that topic or not. It can either be 200 questions which are all different. It can even be 50 questions 4 times. Because let me tell you, repetition and increasing your familiarity, revising it again and again really helps in quant. You cannot understate its importance when it comes to the quantitative section. It's really important that you constantly revisit certain questions, and that really improves your overall accuracy in a particular topic. So I do not believe in giving like 10, 15 ways of doing things. I think minimalism is the best way to prepare. So my idea is, for whatever topic you want to master, you should aim for 200 questions. Once you're done with 200 questions, that's when you will have enough clarity regarding the topic so that you can easily solve it in the exam. So this is what I wanted to convey about the quant section, that have some patience, reach that 200 level of question solving, and then you will be comfortable in solving the questions. Obviously, some topic will require extra efforts, some topics will require lesser effort. It varies, it's very subjective. But this is a good approximation, which is 200 questions, after which you will be comfortable to solve it in the exam. Now, coming to the verbal section, the 23 questions that are asked in verbal, option elimination is a very key thing that you all should definitely focus on, because, like, let me put it this way, you have 5 options. Out of those 5, 4 are incorrect and 1 is correct. So randomly, if you're selecting an option, what's the chance of that option being wrong? Isn't that higher? That's higher, right? Like, the chance of an option being wrong is actually 4 by 5 and it being correct 1 by 5. And if I denote it in percentage, there's a 80% chance that an option is incorrect, and there's a 20% chance that an option is correct. So you should always focus on eliminating the options. There are a lot of techniques of option elimination that can be discussed in depth. That in itself is a 2-hour lecture. But the idea is that rather than always going for the exact correct answer, you should master option elimination, because this really helps, particularly when you're confused in two options. Obviously, there will be a lot of questions where you won't have to use option elimination, but this is a very key skill to have. Another thing that is very important in verbal is, so most of the preparatory tools give you the option to flag an answer as guess. So if you are guessing the answer of a question and you're not certain about it, you should always flag it as guess. It's very important that you do that so that you are clear on whether if you have solved the question without guessing or without rushing whether it was correct or not. Your accuracy really matters in verbal section. Like I'm saying, the biggest difference between the previous GMAT version and this GMAT version is that there are very less scope of mistakes that you can do while attempting this particular paper. So every question counts, and you have to focus on accuracy way more than you ever focus on speed. Trust me, speed will be built after accuracy. The other way around can never happen. You can never expect to get fast first and then be accurate, but you can always expect to get accurate and then be fast. You just need to improve your processes of getting the answers correct. This is something that requires a lot of patience, that requires a lot of deliberation from all of you in terms of practicing. I will get into what kind of deliberation you need to have while solving this section, but these are the two things that you need to keep in mind while preparing for the verbal section. The one is really learn option elimination, and the second is accuracy matters much more than speed. Always focus on whether you get the question right or wrong, even if you take some time initially. Time will reduce over time. Now, coming to the third section, which is data insight sections. So, data insight sections has a variety of questions. And after writing a lot of mocks, and I'm attempting my GMAT tomorrow of the Focus Edition to see how this paper is, I have realized that it's very important to write down information. I'm not saying write everything, just involve your hand and involve that sense of writing things, because the questions that I have gotten wrong is because of overload of data and not being able to recollect. Like, for example, the multi source reasoning questions has three tabs. There is a tab 1 of entire information, there is tab 2 of entire information, there is tab 3 of entire information. You can select from tab to tab to tab to read that information, but it is an overload of information. And then question also have three parts. It can have three statements and you have to answer it as either yes or no. The important thing to note here is, even if you get one sub question wrong, you get the entire question wrong. Like, let's say you got the first statement correct, second statement correct, and third wrong, you will still get the question as incorrect. There is no partial marking inside a multi-source reasoning question. And that's why it's very important to write down certain information, be very good at recollecting data. Now, coming to the data sufficiency question. So what happens while solving data sufficiency questions is there are certain things that we forget, certain steps that we forget. Let's say it's a number system related thing. And let's say the question says there are two variables x and y which are greater than 0. So the thing is that if I draw the number line, the variable behaves very differently when it is greater than 1, and it behaves very differently when it is between 0 to 1. Like, for example, uh, let's say questions asked, is x square greater than x? And you have to answer this. So if I take a number which is greater than 1, let's say I take 3, I get 9 is greater than 3 because x square is 9. This inequality holds. But if I'm taking a value, let's say 0.5 or 1 by 2. So 1 by 2 whole square will be equal to 1 by 4. And 1 by 4 is actually less than x. So here I'm getting x square less than x, not greater than. So that's why it's very important to have certain checklist of eliminating and ensuring that you have done everything clearly. Now coming to the questions which are basically graphs and table kind of questions, and that you will see in your data insight section. You really need very strong foundation of percentage and statistics. They ask you question about whether there's a positive correlation. They ask you question about range of data, mean of data, percentage change, percentage increase, ratio change, negative correlation, positive correlation. Anything can come. So you need very strong foundation of how to solve questions pertaining to percentages and statistics. So these are the basic things that you need to keep in mind when it comes to the three section. Again, I do not want to overload you all with information. That is why I'm like keeping things very simple so that you have an idea of things you need to do before you prepare and the mindset you need to be, and very clear on what kind of paper you're going to attempt. Now, one new thing that you can see in your report for Focus Edition is time pressure. They literally make an entire graph to depict the kind of time pressure you felt in that section. And that time pressure value changes on how much time at an average you take to solve a question. If you're taking a lot of time initially, the time pressure you will have on questions later is very high. And I have practiced and experienced this. What I have learned is that, let me first take you to the graph. So you will see something like this for every section for your official GMAT paper. Basically, what zero means in this scale is that there is no pressure. Any value less than that means that there is negative pressure of time. That means you are ahead of time. You clearly have enough time to solve the question. Like for example, in this case, I had around 4 minutes to solve the last question. And this is of data insight section. So 45 minutes for 20 question means you have roughly 2.25 minutes per question. So if you have 2.25 minutes per question, having extra 4 minutes for the last question means you actually have negative time pressure. Now, why is this important? This is important because the time allocated to the section has decreased. Earlier, a section was more than 60 minutes. Now it is just 45 minutes. In 45 minutes, you have to ensure that you pace it in a way that in the end, you shouldn't be left with a lot of question and very less time. Because what that will do is that will really hamper your accuracy. So let's say, for example, somewhere here you came across a question where you ended up spending 8 minutes. So this graph will go something like this. And the problem that will happen in the end is you will have 3 minutes left and 3 questions left. Most likely you will get all of them wrong. Because of the added time pressure, there's a very high likelihood that in the last 3 minutes, if you have 3 questions, you will get either one correct and two wrong, or you will get all three wrong. Because data sufficiency questions are slightly lengthier and it easily takes more than 2 minutes to solve it at an average. So this time pressure graph is very important, or basically, in other words, pacing your exam is very important. A good comparison is a marathon. So whenever if you ever read anything about a marathon, it's really about managing that pace, maintaining that space. You cannot go faster, you can't go slower. If you go slower, your average time will reduce. If you go faster, you will get fatigue, you will get tired very easily, and you will not be able to finish the marathon. So it's all about pacing. Now, what this GMAT Focus Edition is also a lot about pacing. And this is where the idea that you can edit the answer of a question comes in. So let's say you came across here. Instead of spending 8 minutes on this, after 1.5 minutes, you realize that I should revisit this question, or it will waste a lot of time here, and then I will have a lot of pressure on the remaining questions. Like I'll have a pressure of doing the remaining questions really quickly. I will come back to this. So let's say the worst case scenario, you don't come back to this question. And that is practically the worst case scenario, right? Like what's the worst that can happen? That I'm not able to come back. But you will have ample amount of time to actually get the other questions right. Like it's better to get one question incorrect as compared to getting 3 questions incorrect. And a lot of times you will have enough time to actually go back. Like this is something that I've experienced in the exam, and I have come back. Like let's say, for example, in this exam itself, I marked this for review. I spent like 4 minutes. I could not get the answer. I marked this and I moved on. Like I selected, so you cannot move on to a question without attempting it. So I selected a random guess on the option. I went ahead and did all the questions, and luckily I was able to take time pressure to negative. So I had 2-3 minutes in the end left to go back to this question and review it. So I went back, I reviewed it, and I was able to get it absolutely correct. So this really matters. Like I'm spending a lot of time on this because focus addition is a lot about time pressure. It's a lot about pacing it right. If you go too fast, you will be inaccurate, get some questions wrong. If you go too slow, in the last questions, you will not have enough time. Your graph will look something like this, and the time pressure will drastically increase. So this is the particular case where I
Yeah,
feel, just one second.
so,
This is the particular case where I feel
mhm.
editing answer really helps. Yeah. You wanted to say something?
HDMI cable is a laptop.
So that's everything about the time pressure that I basically wanted to cover. Moving to time management. So this is one big thing that I've learned over my teaching career is that we really overestimate the amount of time we can actually give to studying. Like whenever we plan, we think we have more time. Like I have had a lot of scenarios where a lot of aspirants have created a 12-hour week study timetable, and in reality they were only able to give 8 hours or 6 hours. So a good thumb rule is whatever time you think you have, let's say you think you have 15 hours, prepare a timetable of only 60%. So prepare a timetable of 9 hours that I can only study for 9 hours. This is one very important thing because what happens is you overestimate, let's say you allocated 15 hours and you were able to only study for 10 hours. What will happen? You will have a negative feeling because you expected yourself to study for 15 hours. And in reality, you were only able to give 10 hours to it. Now, because of that, you might feel a sense of not being able to achieve the bare minimum. But let's say you only planned for 9 hours, and in this case, you gave 10 hours. You will have a positive feeling of overachieving. That you know what, I allocated only 9 hours, but I actually studied for 10 hours. This is a classic case of having less expectation and achieving more. This really matters. Like this thing really matters psychologically to not have unrealistic targets of time. Because trust me on this, whenever we are planning anything, we generally tend to overestimate. I'm not saying everyone does that, but I'm just saying that is the general trend. So a good rule is make timetable for 60% of your predicted time. And it's very, very, very important. So, like I said, if you feel you can give 15 hours to study a week, make a timetable of 60% of it, which is 9 hours. So, you make a timetable for 9 hours, which you will follow and ensure that you are able to cover everything in those 9 hours. Now, while you're covering the syllabus, let's say you're going through all the quant topics, you're going through all the verbal topics, your 60% focus should be on current topics. Now, current topic means the topic which are upcoming, which will be covered in the class, and the topic which were covered in the current class. Why upcoming topic matters? Because it's very important to be familiar with all the topics that will be covered. And why current class matters? Because you need to give yourself enough time to solidify foundation, to build like solid foundation. And once you have solid foundation of a topic, it's very easy to score big in GMAT. At the same time, it's super important to allocate 40% of your time for revision. Like, I feel that you should revisit every topic at least twice every week. Like, not just once, twice. Because if you don't do that, trust me, you will have a lot of problem in making that momentum, getting all the questions correct. Like, you can compare your GMAT prep to muscle building. Like if you want to get very lean, good muscles, you need to be very regular in terms of your strength exercises and with your diet. So you have to be very regular with your study plan. You should have a clear idea of how much time you need to focus on current topics and how much time you need to give on revisiting. And a good number is 60-40. This is while we are covering syllabus. And once we are done, approximately, I'm not saying this is exact, this is what your time should allocation should look like. You should give 20% of your time in general to solving full 2 hour 15 minutes of practice exam, and you should spend 15% of your time in analysis. There's a lot of thought to be put into analysis. Like, say for example, GMAT lets you select the order in which you want to attempt your paper. You can attempt quant, verbal, data. You can attempt data, verbal, quant. You can attempt quant, data, verbal. So basically, all the 6 cases which are possible in terms of order of attempting, you can attempt anyone. And trust me, for everyone, the priority is very different. Like, let's say, for example, my case, I am very confident with my quant attempt. So I do it first to build confidence, then I take that confidence and do verbal. And then here I take a break and write data insights. So this model works for me. For someone who's very good with verbal, the model that will work is to do verbal first, then data insight, then give yourself a break, and then go through quant. Have some momentum, have some confidence. All of these small things really matter a lot in analysis. Another kind of question that you should ask while analysis is time spent per question, number of questions you got wrong, because like I said, the focus is so much on accuracy that even if you get 2 questions wrong in a section, that can drastically impact your score. Earlier you had some room for error. Now there is no room for error whatsoever while attempting. So that's why it's very important to allocate 15% of your time to analyzing the mocks that you've written. 20% of the time should get into time sectional. So let's say, for example, you think you need additional practice for quant. So you should solve more quant sectionals. Basically, just the section exam of 45 minutes of that topic again and again and again. And 35% should get into revision and untimed practice. So basically, here you're practicing topic you are weak at. You are going through revisiting all the topics again and again. Like I said, you need to expose yourself to every topic at least twice a week. At least. That is the bare minimum that everyone should do. And finally, it's very important to spend 10% times on the errors you've been consistently making. Now, that is why even if you like make an account on gmatclub.com, you have a separate error log. And I highly recommend everyone to maintain errors that you keep on doing. Like, write on it every once in 2 days, once in 3 days. Just keep on writing the kind of errors you make and be very mindful about that. Because like I said, there is no room for error. And if you keep on looking at errors, you will find certain patterns. Like, for some people, what happens is they make very minuscule calculation mistake. For some people, a lot of time what happens is they haven't read the question correctly. They missed a statement in the question. There are so many students, what they do is they do not read what is being asked and they randomly mark something else. A lot of time the problem lies in comprehension. So it is different for everyone, and that's why it's very important to focus on your errors and practice in a way to reduce error. So practice questions where you are more prone for error, practice question type where you make errors more, and spend 10% of your time on that. And this is how your time should look like once you're done with the syllabus till the time you attempt your GMAT. And if you follow everything that I've said about all the sections, the kind of time management you need to do, be very clear about what time pressure is. It's not that hard to get whatever desired score you were aiming for. And coming to the last thing that I wanted to cover, again, I don't believe in very lengthy 1.5 hour sessions and give you overload of information. I believe in simplicity, minimalism. These are the main things that all of you need to focus on. The general tips that I can give you which really help. The first thing is that start reading every day and read with comprehension. So I have a very simple thumb rule. My thumb rule is that whenever you start preparing for GMAT, you reduce time on social media by 50%, or time on any leisure activity where there is scope to reduce. And you invest that 50% on reading and on improving focus. Now, what do I mean by read with comprehension? So you already have this chat GPT tool, which is brilliant. So let's say you read an entire passage. Think about a summary for it. Think about the main idea and then put it in chat GPT and ask, what is the summary? See if you got the right summary. Cross verify with ChatGPT. Ask questions to ChatGPT like what can be inferred from this? What is the main idea about this? So the idea is not to read, it's to read with intent, like understanding how to make a summary, what kind of main ideas are there, where an opinion is mentioned, where an inference is mentioned. All of these small things are really important to ensure accuracy in the verbal section and to ensure that you understood the question correctly in data insights and quant. So in quant and data insights, both section, GMAT tries a lot to trap you by making the language slightly confusing. So if you constantly read with comprehension is very important. Another thing is, if you think in English, like let's say for example, you are so accustomed to speaking in English that you already think in English. That's brilliant. If you don't think in English and if your inner voice talks to you in your mother tongue, it's very important to practice translation as well. See, I'm telling you that if you are practicing translation, your accuracy will improve, speed will follow. So it's a good idea to translate whatever you have, like you're reading and whatever you're going through, and then try and solve it. Second thing, I believe, to counter time pressure, you should put by default pressure on yourself while solving those sections, that you should aim to finish latest in 42 minutes or maybe even 40 minutes. Like you should finish a quant section in 40 minutes, a verbal section in 40 minutes, or a data insight section in 40 minutes at max. So that is how you should pace yourself so that you are able to get all the questions correct with proper time in 45 minutes when you're attempting your GMAT Focus Edition. So a difference of 5 minutes really make a difference, or a reduction of 3 minutes also prepares you, just makes you fast enough to be able to tackle the entire exam in 45 minutes. So this is a very important tip I feel that all of you should follow, that you should aim to get every sectional solved not in 45 minutes, which is the stipulated time, but in 42 minutes while solving sectional. While doing mock, you do not need to do this. While doing mock, you should try and simulate the ideal conditions that you're giving 45 minutes to every section. But when you are solving a section test of, let's say, quant, or a section test of verbal, or a section test of data insight, you should aim to do it in 40 to 42 minutes at max. And finally, you really need to do things that improve focus, be it meditation, be it regular exercising. One thing I can highly recommend is this app. It's a brain training app that I personally use every day to improve my focus, to be fast in calculation, to improve my verbal skills, and to improve my mental agility. And the fun thing is, Peak also has a percentile system. So basically, it compares you to everyone who's using the app and gives you a percentile. So what I'm trying to explain is, doing these two things, you don't need to find any extra time. Reduce time from activities you think you can reduce. A lot of you use social media, reduce it to half. Some of you might be spending time on other activities, reduce it by half and invest in these two things. They are very important supplemental things along with GMAT. Like exercising is important because it ensures that you're grounded and humble in the present. There's an hormonal balance in you. And these small things really matter. Again, GMAT in general is a decision making paper. It's a paper to get you into college where you become a leader. You really need to focus on these things as well, apart from focusing on the syllabus. So that's all I had. I had a 35-minute PPT to present to all of you, and I kept the last 25 minutes for question and answers. So after covering everything, do any of you have any query, anything in general you want to talk about to me, you can ask me now, because this was everything I wanted to cover. And if you want me to just go through a particular slide again,